Hi, I'm Charles with Anicap. This is my recap for the anime Shangri-La Frontier. If you like my recaps, please consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell. The story begins as we see that a half-naked masked man just defeated a monster. A creepy girl that probably had a few too many energy drinks watches nearby and celebrates that the Dark Lord was defeated. The luchador-looking guy proudly watches as the beast vanishes and the sun emerges from behind the clouds. His name is Sunraku, and the weird girl once again praises the warrior. She points out how it's been a long hard journey, and Sunraku couldn't agree more. Sunraku then surprisingly takes to the sky and exclaims that it's time for Faria to go with the Dark Lord. He then does her a huge favor by rearranging her hideous face with his foot, and tells her that she is the real menace in this world. We see that Sunraku was actually in a game. He proudly proclaims that he finally beat it, and also managed to get revenge for everything that Gargoyle put him through. In this world, display-based games are considered retro, and fully immersive VR games have become the norm. Beneath the small number of works of significance lies a massive pile of releases whose games designs don't live up to their improved graphics technology. These games are known as trash games. Although most people rightfully despise trash games, there are those who gleefully seek them out, and these people are called freaks. Our protagonist named Rokuro is one of these freaks, and he proclaims that rumors were true and the game he just played was a giant pile of garbage. Rokuro compares the feeling he gets from beating a trash game to how a convict feels when finishing up a prison sentence. This psycho then wonders what trash game he will try next, and we learn that he is known as the Trash Game Hunter. When he heads downstairs, we learn that his mom is kind of a weirdo too, as Rokuro tells her that one of her butterflies got out. At school, some random girl stalks Rokuro and practices what she plans to say to him. She decides to ask about video games and waits for the perfect moment, but some other kid beats her to it. At a game shop, the owner named Mana hopes that summer vacation will help bring her more business. Rokuro's stalker named Rei arrives at the shop. Mana knows exactly why she is there, but tells Rei that Rokuro isn't there today. Rei is too shy to admit to it, but Mana points out how nice it must be to be young and in love. Mana explains that Rokuro has been busy trying to crack an extra special trash game, so he hasn't been there in a while. She shows her the game called Faria Chronicle Online, and states that it's a legendary trash game. All the allies in the game have terrible AI, enemy attack patterns don't make any sense, and there are an absurd number of bugs in the code. The game is also extremely hard. Serious skills are needed, even just to beat the first boss, so it has caused tons of players to rage out of control, throwing their headsets like lunatic degenerates. On top of all that, she has also heard that players have to fight the final boss in board shorts and a mask. Just then, Rokuro arrives looking for any new trash games that might have come out. He makes his way to the counter, and we learn that Rei is an absolute coward as she instantly disappears. Mana is shocked to see him there, and Rokuro proudly announces that he beat Faria Chronicle Online. Rei watches from around the corner like the stalker she is, and hears Rokuro explain that the game was a spectacular pile of garbage. The worst part about it was the female lead Faria. She's the cause of pretty much every problem he ran into on the journey. She makes every situation worse and gets villagers and party members killed. She also never suffered any consequences for anything, since she would always find a way to blame it all on the last boss, even though the boss didn't do anything and she was a problem all along. Rokuro continues to trash the trash game as he explains that if he ever gave Faria even the tiniest little shove to vent his annoyance, she would just get upset. She would not go with him anywhere and refuse to move the story along. The autosave would lock him into the state of affairs, and it would take 3 hours to get back in the psycho's good graces. Mana is surprised that he didn't just give up, which makes sense since he would be able to get an actual life, but he explains that that's how they get you. In the 3 minutes between beating the final boss and before the credits start rolling, you can beat the snot out of the crazy girl without fear of retaliation. Rokuro points out the irony, since the more Faria annoys you, the more determined you become to brave all the garbage to experience the 3 minutes of heaven. This guy clearly takes trash games way too seriously, as he states that when that moment of bliss finally comes, it's as if all his frustrations are wiped away. In that moment, he felt like he understood why he was put on this earth. For some reason, Rei is smiling like a creep while hearing this, and Rokuro explains that the trash game was too good. Now he can't think of what to follow it up with. Mana comes up with the absurd idea to not play a trash game for once. She explains that experiencing the lows in life can help appreciate the highs, but the reverse is also true. Mana then introduces him to the game Shangri-La Frontier, the fully immersive VR game with over 30 million players. She continues to convince him and gives Rei a not so subtle wink for some reason. She explains that it can be fun to try things designed for mass appeal now and then, and Rokuro seems to give it some serious thought. Back home, we find that Rokuro's dedication to his gaming experience reaches dangerously high nerd levels as he studies the history of the game. He finds that Shangri-La Frontier, aka SLF, went on the market less than a year ago, and it set a Guinness World Record for simultaneous player logins. The concept is, a colony fleet that came from space died out, but not before leaving a new society behind. Thousands of years later, the PCs are living their lives at roughly medieval tech levels. This piques his interest as it's a setup that allows for effortless inclusion of sci-fi elements. Rokuro seems to be getting convinced, since unlike Feria, which is so bad that haters find themselves desperately searching for redeeming features, this game is so beloved that its few haters are completely drowned out by tens of thousands of fans. Rokuro puts down his gamer fuel and decides to try the game out. We then learn a bit about the company that made the game, called Utopia Entertainment Software. It was founded by the genius programmer Tsukuyo Tsukuri, who developed a fully immersive VR game system. It's a leader in the fields of software development, hardware, and internet service provision. Rokuro puts on his virtual reality headset and wonders how long it's been since he played something that wasn't trash. The game begins with character creation, and Rokuro is amazed by how many options there are for classes. He chooses a twin blade mercenary for its flexibility, and then moves on to origin. He reads that Wanderers build defense slowly, but get bonuses to luck. Luck affects critical chance and item drop rate, so he decides to go with that. Things begin to get really exciting when he finds how many options there are to character customization, as it allows him to even change race and body type. He makes some really strange noises as he gets a bit too excited, and he reminds himself to calm down. Rokuro realizes that he has been so poisoned by trash games that he is now getting blown away by silly small stuff. Seemingly forgetting about what he just said, Rokuro excitedly states that it's time to go hardcore on character design for the first time in forever. We then surprisingly see that his finished character design looks a bit strange, but it at least saves us the pain of having to look at his ugly face. He is not to be mistaken as a half-naked furry, since he actually has a very good reason for doing this. We learn that his playstyle consists of ignoring armor in favor of getting the best weapons possible. These weapons are costly, of course, but in SLF, amazingly, you're given the option to sell your starter equipment during character creation, and you can make quite a profit. Rokuro thankfully wanted to hide his face, and the only option was the dumb-looking bird mask. He had no choice, as it would be pretty awkward for him to play half-naked if everyone could see his face. Rokuro is the type of player who uses the same name in every game he plays, so he inputs the name Sunraku. He lays down on his bed and finally enters the game. Rokuro skips right past the prologue because who actually cares, and arrives in the world of the god tier game to find one of his kind. It flies away and Rokuro is immediately impressed since moving around feels pretty much like real life. He tests everything by running and climbing through the area and points out how much better everything feels compared to the game with the disgustingly hideous girl in it. Rokuro marvels at how large the world is and pulls out a map. He wonders why he didn't start out in a tutorial town for beginners like most games, and doesn't realize that those who choose Wanderer as their origin start out at a random point in the beginners area. He decides to head to the starting town, but once again admires how good the controls feel. He checks his stats and acknowledges that his low defense is because of his half-nakedness, but hopes that his high luck stat will make up for it. Just then, he is surprised to be attacked so soon as he encounters a goblin. Rokuro refuses to be a half-naked coward and decides that it's time to see what the game's combat engine is made of. The brave little goblin initiates the fight, but probably regrets all his life decisions as Rokuro uses a powerful attack to slice him in half. Rokuro impresses himself, but acknowledges that that goblin was just a scrub enemy in the intro. It does level him up though, and he sees that its axe can be dual-wielded. Something moves in some bushes nearby, and Rokuro thinks about how there's a lot to learn in the game, like monster weaknesses, patterns, and item drops. He states that whether it's a trash game or god tier game, everyone gets the feeling he's getting now. The elation of diving headfirst into a new world. It's something that can't be found in real life. His enemy finally emerges from the bushes and just barely misses its attack on Rokuro. The attack was extremely powerful, and he acknowledges that it would have put him down if it hit him. The terrifying bunny goes in for another attack, but this time Rokuro blocks it, and he counters while landing a critical hit. Bugs Bunny with rabies is far too determined though and continues attacking. Rokuro is disappointed with what this game has to offer, and we see that he has pierced the bunny. He explains that the bunny just kept going for his neck, so it was far too easy to figure out how to counter it. He is glad to see that he has leveled up even more, but disappointed to not see the rabbit's sword as loot. Just then, his stat screen reveals that he has met a certain condition and learned the skill Flash Counter. Apparently, he can unlock skills by taking certain actions, so Rokuro takes a moment to appreciate how well designed the game is. He realizes that since a player's own skill supplements their dodges and parries, he can fight pretty well against even higher level enemies. This makes him want to try a bunch of different fighting styles. His appreciation doesn't stop there though, as Rokuro realizes that he has been playing this entire time without encountering a single bug. We then watch all the previous bugs he had to deal with, such as the hitbox bug, the clipping bug, and the infamous invisibility bug. He expresses excitement as he wasn't sure if he could enjoy a bug-free game after all this time, but is sure now that he can really have a good time with it. Rokuro heads out in search of another rabies bunny, but stops for a moment to completely destroy an ogre. He levels up again and decides that he should probably allocate his stat points. He wishes that the Vorpal bunny would spawn more often, but realizes that it must be a rare enemy. He still managed to kill 50 of them and get his sweet looking dual swords. He also learned some new skills, but states that only one of them is worth using. Rokuro decides to move forward though, since he's not going to gain any more levels with the scrub tier monsters around there. He has strayed too far away from the starter town, but sees that he's close to another town, aptly named Secondville. He makes his way there, but sees that a snake with ponytails is blocking a bridge. Rokuro's relieved to finally have a real challenge and prepares to fight the stylish serpent. Don't let the poor hair design fool you, this beast is actually very powerful, as it is the area boss that is meant to be fought by a party. Rokuro takes a moment to think about all the attacks a snake usually has in games. He states that with an avatar that actually moves the way he wants it to, he doesn't need defenses to beat the boss, and he charges forward. He demands that the game give him something exciting, and we see that Rokuro is enjoying himself quite a bit. At the exit of a nearby town, several people look at something in amazement. Their jaws drop, and we see that it's someone wearing gigantic armor. This is the starting town Firstia. The townspeople see that this person has high-level equipment and a crest from an achievement-focused clan. The clueless bunch wonder what someone like that is doing there, and we can tell by the voice that it's a girl. She checks all the names of the people in front of her and reminds herself that Rokuro gives all his characters the same name. He isn't there though, which is strange since all starting players come to Firstia. Back in real life, we see that Rokuro's stalker knows no bounds, as it was her looking for him in the game. Back with our pigeon-faced hero, he begins his attack on the snake with hair so mesmerizing it's as if it was stolen from an angel. Rokuro decides to watch its patterns and dodges a few of its attacks. The genius gamer determines that it's still a boss for beginners. Its movements are easy to read and it won't have any insta-kill moves. The glass cannon realizes that he can beat this thing without taking a hit, since even one hit would kill him anyway. Rokuro masterfully dodges another attack, but his weapon shatters. He knew its durability was getting low, but can't believe it just broke on the first hit. He sees that Princess Ponytails has tough scales, and decides that it's time to try out his sweet blood blades. Rokuro goes in for an attack while quipping that he's going to make snake fillets, but is surprised by some purple stuff spewed out by the ponytailed python. His first thought is that it might be poop, but a display reveals that it's poison, and he will take damage every 10 seconds. Featherface realizes that he might have underestimated the snake, and its beautiful flowing head of hair. Our god of trash games tells the snake that he has beaten trash games with mechanics way cheaper than this, and a little poop flinging won't be enough to get him down. Rokuro thinks about how the poison deals him 1 damage every 10 seconds, which means he has about 4 minutes left, so he will need a reliable way to land criticals if he wants to beat it. Our Birdman uses his bird brain to determine that criticals in this game don't trigger at random. They seem to trigger when an attack is landed in an ideal way, or when an enemy is hit in their weak point. However, the snake isn't just fashionable, its body is covered in super tough scales, so he concludes that its weak point has to be its head. The snake, super protective of its stylish hair, blocks his attack, making Rokuro realize that landing an attack on its head won't be easy. Instead, he decides to make his own weak point and uses the move Screw Pierce to pierce its body. He continues to attack the hole he made, and this absolute god gamer states that the defensive properties of a wounded section change, allowing criticals to trigger there. The snake dramatically screams in pain, with his beautiful head of hair flowing through the wind like it's in a shampoo commercial. Rakuro hacks away as his time is running out, but he has no clue how much HP the snake has and isn't sure if he will make it. He is pushed back, and Rakuro now realizes that beating trash games online made him pretty cocky. When he initially entered this mass appeal game for casuals, this cocky peacock thought that he would be able to no-hit things easily and wouldn't have to use recovery items. He was just being arrogant though, and the snake consumes him. Rakuro isn't done yet and uses his flash counter move. Rakuro takes the upper hand by grabbing onto a lock of its hair that is so beautiful it rivals that of a unicorn's tail. One last piercing screw to its face causes its head to explode, and we say goodbye to the hair salon loving serpent. Rakuro couldn't be happier as he levels up after defeating the old poop snake. His loot is good enough to fetch a good price, but he notices that his health is still dropping. He has no time to distribute his attribution points and just dumps it all into stamina and agility. The bird starts to fly back to town to buy an antidote, but realizes he doesn't know where the shops are, and is certain he won't make it in time. He can't even register his respawn point since he doesn't know where the inns are yet, but he has no choice but to run as fast as he can, like he's on a wild goose chase. At the town, we see that a guy named Yamamoto is ecstatic that after 3 whole months of trying, he finally got the girl he's crushing on to start playing SLF with him. Her name is Maya. This Romeo has maneuvered himself into the role of the advice-giving veteran, and won't let this chance pass him by. Unfortunately, his intimate encounter is interrupted by our raging lunatic, and Maya thinks that it's a monster. Yamamoto points out that it has a name, so it must be a player. This crazy girl thinks she should kill it anyway, but Yamamoto points out that killing other players puts a skull in front of your name. The murderous psychopath considers it, but decides against it, and they wonder if the bird got hit with the poison poop. Yamamoto tells him where the inn is, but explains that the respawn point will only register once he gets in bed. At the inn, the receptionist is talking way too calmly as she points out all the amenities they have to offer, so our frantic hero rushes her. Rakuro finally makes it to his bed to register his respawn point, but the poison hasn't been cured, and he dies. Rakuro returns to reality where he is disappointed to have died, but glad he didn't lose any items. He decides that he will have to thank the guy that helped him, but for now just appreciates how awesome the game SLF is. Our god of trash games eventually arrives in Secondia in search of necessities like a map and recovery items. The bird thinks he should buy a powerful main weapon to help him reach his goal of hitting the top player ranks, but soon realizes that perverts are staring at him for being half naked, and he makes the right decision by going to get clothes first. He just gets the cheapest clothes he can buy since it's only to keep people from looking at him weird, but then strangely decides that his bird head is less weird looking than a mask. At a weapon shop, Rakuro doesn't like what it has to offer, and the weapon store guy points out that Rakuro's bunny daggers are actually very rare. Rakuro becomes excited, however, when the man explains that he can make him weapons, but he would have to get the materials. Our little pigeon wastes no time and instantly heads to an area with plenty of ore. However, he gets his feathers all flustered as he just ends up mining stone after stone. He is frustrated since he has been swinging his pickaxe for at least 30 minutes, but only has 2 of the 6 pieces of ore he needs. As if he didn't have enough to worry about with all the mud and a heavy pickaxe, an annoying frog appears to do what frogs do. This poor frog messed with the wrong bird. This little frog swims in the mud like it thinks it's swimming in the Olympics, and it has its innocent little heart set on first place. Rakuro thought they could coexist since it wasn't that dangerous, but determines that the frog clearly wants to be turned into materials. His attack knocks the innocent little frog back, so he goes in to finish it off. He knows that the frog has slash resistance since his suit is made from its skin, and decides that he can only use bludgeon and piercing attacks. His axe is perfect for this, but his feathers get all ruffled again when he realizes that the marsh's mud slows down a player's movement significantly. The poor little frog meets its demise at the hand of our beak-faced hero, but it was so easy for him that it didn't even cheer him up. Rakuro notices that more new players have been showing up lately because of summer break, and determines that he must beat everyone to the race for materials. Afterwards, Rakuro amazes the shop owner with all his ore. He is told that one of the pieces is really special and has 2 blades made from it. After some time, they are ready, and he finds out that they are god-tier weapons. This very helpful blacksmith states that doing something called raising a weapon is very important. Raising turns out to just mean upgrading, but it's the term used by blacksmiths that take their job way too seriously and think of the weapons they make as their children. All Rakuro can think about is how the blacksmith is an NPC, but its speech and mannerisms are amazing. The NPC tells him not to leave town in armor like he has while it's dark, since nocturnal animals are dangerous. Little does he know our crazy bird friend is up to the challenge and plans to use those dangerous nocturnal animals to break in his new weapons and pile on some more levels. Back at the bridge, we see that the snake has risen from the ashes like a phoenix, with its hair more dazzling than 1,000 suns. Unfortunately, it is met by a powerful attack from Rei, who continues her search for Rakuro. This stalker detective searched the entire beginner's area for him, but determines that he must have defeated the snake without stopping by town, and is now in Secondale. She wonders if a new player could really accomplish such a thing, but is confident that if anyone could, it would be Rakuro. Elsewhere, our battle-loving birdie fights Golem from the Lord of the Rings, and he goes over everything he has learned. First, monster spawns change based on if it's day or night. Most nocturnal monsters are as aggressive and dangerous as the weapon seller said. That has helped him to make progress leveling up and to learn some new skills. However, this particular little beast seems a little too powerful. This one's movement and attacks are on a whole other level from the forest goblins. It's got lots of HP and incorporates feints into its fighting style like it's been doing it all its life, like it's fighting for Frodo's ring. Just then, the little goblin lets out a crazy sounding battle cry and calls all its little goblin buddies. As if fighting one wasn't bad enough, now he has to face several, and he determines that he would have to run at full speed just to have a chance of getting away. However, just then, Rakuro snaps himself out of that mentality, and reminds himself that he is enjoying himself far too much to just run away. Rakuro may be a bird, but he is no chicken, and takes on the challenge. As he defeats the annoying little goblins, Rakuro thinks about how he has just been having a lot of fun this entire time, and telling himself that god tier games are pretty neat. However, this game has much more to offer. It is in this very moment, as a gigantic ferocious monster appears, that Rakuro encountered the true Shangri-La frontier. Rakuro can't believe his eyes as he learns that it's a unique monster, and he braces himself for the fight of his life. Elsewhere, we get a glimpse into Rei's room as she is in-game. This crazy stalker is looking for Rakuro and questions Yamamoto, who claims to have seen Birdface. The bloodthirsty psycho he has a crush on wants to end Rei because she apparently thinks everything is a monster, but Yamamoto reminds her not to end other players. Yamamoto explains that Big Bird went to Secondale after getting a face full of poison from the python. It was clearly him since no other player is crazy enough to wear a bird head while half naked, but Yamamoto points out that he could have changed his equipment by now. Rei is in disbelief at how Rakuro beat the ravenous python without visiting the first town. Rei leaves the two snitches with a parting gift called the Coordinate Teleporter and blasts off. It turns out that they didn't even know Rei, but Yamamoto can tell from the emblem on her cape that she is from a clan focused on a specific unique monster, Lycagon the Night Slayer. Unique monsters are a special class of monsters with both an individual name and a title. Most monsters, when beaten or captured, respawn as a new individual after a set period of time passes. But for the unique monsters, there's only one of each in the entire world. Rumor says that there's 7 of them in SLF, but the spawn criteria for most of them are unknown. For each of these unique monsters called Colossi, lots of top players have formed clans focused on taking them down. These Colossi are very rare, but the real issue is how abnormally strong they are. It's been an entire year since the game started, but even with a player base of over 30 million, not one person has managed to defeat a single unique monster. Back with Rakuro, we see that he has encountered one of these impossibly strong Colossi. He learns that it's the unique monster Lycagon the Night Slayer. Rakuro thinks about how the little goblins he was fighting earlier were pretty tough, but this unique monster blew them away with just one attack. All he can do is stare at the ferocious beast, as he is certain that getting hit by just one of its attacks will end his life. The giant wolf thing isn't satisfied with just standing there though, and initiates its attack. Rakuro saves himself for a moment with a block, but his attempt at a counterattack fails. Just seconds in, Rakuro's already feeling the effects of the tough battle, but he still decides to taunt it by telling the beast that unique monsters like him don't have much going for them. Deep down though, our glass cannon knows just how close he was to seeing an end screen. He is glad that he spent all night grinding, since if he hadn't learned Perfect Parry, he would be a virtual reality ghost right now. Perfect Parry allows him to avoid an enemy's physical attack if executed with exact timing. The beast continues its relentless attack, and Rakuro once again just narrowly avoids it. He knows that he needs to go all out just to give himself a chance at winning, and goes in for an attack of his own. Rakuro switches to his vorpal choppers he got from the rabies rabbit and combines it with a movement ability to land a critical strike. The beast is hardly affected and continues to bombard Rakuro with attacks. The fight pauses for a moment just as the Night Slayer disappears. It reappears to land a few more attacks, only to disappear again moments later when the moon is covered by clouds. It sneaks up on him once more, but Rakuro shows that he can more than handle his own against it. The monster seems to be teleporting as it attacks Rakuro from behind, but Rakuro shows his skill as a gamer when he times his parry perfectly to just barely save his glass cannon self from getting blown up. The beast reappears before Rakuro, but he's clearly having fun as he lets out a chuckle. The fight continues as the beast continues to disappear and reappear. Rakuro manages to land another strike, but exclaims that its pelt is even tougher than the ponytailed python's scales. Rakuro has been wailing on the thing for over 5 minutes without taking a hit, but the unique monster is just too tough. Rakuro has landed hundreds of critical strikes, but he isn't even sure if he's doing any damage. His vorpal choppers, which started out close to mint condition, are already falling apart. Rakuro is certain that if he doesn't find a softer spot to land a hit on, his weapons are gonna fall apart. He acknowledges that this beast is way out of the league of what he's able to fight at this stage, but that's exactly the way he likes it. And that's what makes Shangri-La Frontier a god-tier game. Our intense protagonist could not be having a better time as he describes the spine-tingling intensity that makes him feel like he's on fire. As he lands several more critical strikes, he states that it's not possible to enjoy a game more. He is a gamer who has made it through a countless number of trash games, filled with bugs and garbage balance. Since he knows that this beast doesn't have a bugged out hitbox like in the other games, there's no chance he will give up now. Rakuro lands yet another powerful attack, but this one doesn't do much either. He gets pushed back outside of the beast's range, but it lets out a loud roar that paralyzes Rakuro. The moon is hidden again, allowing the beast to disappear, and Rakuro, seconds later, is shocked to see that his legs are gone. Rakuro has no clue what just happened, but acknowledges that getting hit by reality really hurts. As he lies there in defeat, he points out that harsh reality. He is not going to suddenly learn an awesome new skill or get saved by a run-in from some mysterious high-level player. Nothing cinematic like that is going to happen. He realizes that that isn't completely true, as somehow after a hit like that, he still has 1 health point left. And that has to be a miracle. He compliments the unique monster for being absurdly strong, but points out that that absurdity was intentionally coded into him. The beast is exactly as strong as its creators wanted it to be. This means that it's beatable absurdity. It's in this very moment that Rakuro has made his decision. He no longer cares about the game's final boss or even the story. It might not be in this moment, but someday he vows that he will beat the unique monster. Rakuro speaks directly to Lycagon the Night Slayer and tells it to make sure that no one else beats it before he does. The ferocious monster finishes him off, and we see that a curse called Lycagon's Mark has been applied. Moments later, Rakuro respawns back in Secondale and finds out that this curse doesn't allow equipment to be equipped to the body part afflicted by the curse. A quick check of his body reveals that he's almost completely covered in the Lycagon's Mark, meaning he cannot equip stuff to his torso and legs. Rakuro vents his frustrations for a moment as he condemns the disappearing wolf for doing this to him. This proves to be the curse that just keeps on giving, as there is plenty more. Monsters of a lower level than the afflicted character will flee. Conversations with NPCs will be affected by the presence of Lycagon's Mark, and the afflicted body part gains a resistance to magic effects. The only way the curse can be removed is through the prayers of a saint or the defeat of the curse's caster. Because of all this bad news, Rakuro decides to get some fresh air before he ends himself. There, he lets out a loud scream as he exclaims that this is the kind of broken curse that happens in trash games. As people wonder what the half-naked weirdo is doing, Rakuro calms himself. He then reminds himself of the 3 principles he learned from all the trash games: patient mind, unbreakable spirit, and a cool-headed judgment. A quick check of his stats actually reveals that players rack up a lot of experience from just fighting a unique monster, which means he leveled up quite a bit, buffed up his skills, and got lots of stat points to allocate. After he allocates his points, he quickly comes to the realization that he made himself a glass cannon who will die in 1 hit. He had no choice though, since he can't even use 2 out of 4 of his armor slots. Spending points on vitality is like peeing in the ocean, and the same goes for his HP. Not only that, but his best stat is 65 in luck. He thinks that is probably why he was just able to survive for a moment with just that 1 HP. He prays that his luck has to be good for something, and hopes that it's okay to turn to luck for help. Just then, a very well-dressed bunny falls on his head. It looks a bit different than bunnies he's seen before, and he wonders if this game allows monsters to spawn in towns. The dapper little furball takes off, so Rokuro goes after it. He is convinced that by the way it is dressed, he will get a rare item if he catches it. Just when it seems like he is about to catch the little guy, it creates a door and the jerk gives our protagonist a smug look as he gets away. Rokuro reads a message on the door that says it's a unique scenario, an invitation from Rabbituza. Rokuro remembers reading about this on the game guide site, and explains that SLF has a sweeping main story about the exploration of the world, but it's also got a huge number of side quests. One subset of these is called unique scenarios, mystery scenarios whose unlock times, locations, contents, and flags aren't publicly known. So the equipment, skills, and spells you can acquire in these unique scenarios are said to all be top class. Rokuro opens the door and thinks about how it's not unusual to see clans searching desperately to find these unique scenarios. He lets out a laugh since encountering one this early in his playthrough is amazing. He determines that it must be the result of dumping his stat points into luck, and promises not to let this chance slip away. Well after he enters the door though, we see that the level requirement is 80, and Rokuro's only level 28. Once inside, he is shocked to find that it's a world full of bunnies, and their beloved carrots. He fears he might have walked into a monster's lair, and is welcomed by the little jerk that taunted him into coming. This bunny wanted to meet Rokuro badly, and explains that all of Rabbituza is abuzz about him. This is because, despite his great personal weakness, Rokuro had the courage to attempt the Night Slayer all on his own, and because he had the skills to continue striking perfect deadly blows without taking a single hit. To them, Rokuro's the embodiment of the Vorpal rabbit soul. Rokuro's freaked out by the little guy's enthusiasm, and the bunny says he wants to be just like Rokuro. Our humble hero is quick to point out that he barely left a scratch on the unique monster, but the bunny explains that's only because it's so powerful. He calls it the Night Emperor and explains that it's a Colossus, capable of gobbling down wyverns like a midday snack. The fact that Rokuro's even there speaking to him now suggests Rokuro's under the divinity's protection. What's even more amazing to the suited furball is that the marks covering Rokuro's body prove that the Night Emperor regards him not as mere prey, but as a fellow being. Rokuro can't help but wonder if something's wrong with the rabbit's brain, and remembers that one of the traits of the mark was that conversations with NPCs would be affected. The bunny explains that his bunny boss would like to meet him, but our skeptical Birdman wonders if this is some kind of revenge trap for all the bunny's lives he's ended. The bunny kind of just ignores his question and introduces himself as Emil. Emil eventually answers and assures Rokuro that his boss is far above petty matters like revenge. At Rabbituza Palace, our new friend explains that while many humans visit Rabbituza on a regular basis, Rokuro will be the first to enter the palace. This is quite shocking, but Rokuro becomes excited as this must mean that this is a unique scenario that only he knows about. Rokuro explains that he was pretty worried after getting all marked up by that unique dog, but it looks like his luck is already turning around. Emil takes him to his father/boss, and Rokuro is shocked by the powerful presence of this guy. He acknowledges Rokuro as the guy that got beat up and peed on by the unique monster that he calls a puppy. He explains that humans lose their Vorpal soul so quickly, so he assumed that they were all hopeless. However, he has now determined that one of them has promise, and shocks Rokuro when he asks for some of his time. This gigantic rabbit introduces himself as the rabbit boss of Rabbituza, named Visach. Back at the game shop, Mana catches Rei, the stalker extraordinaire, on the prowl for her not-so-secret crush Rokuro. Rei tries to deny it, but the game shop owner isn't stupid, and explains that it's summer vacation, so he's probably in Shangri-La Frontier. Rei admits that she hasn't been able to find her prey in-game, because he skipped the first tutorial city entirely. Mana laughs as charting his own course is classic Rokuro, and a typical trash game fanatic move. She explains that Rokuro will do things normal players won't do, and run into all kinds of outrageous unique scenarios. Mana encourages the little stalker to step up her stalking game, but surprises her when she tells Rei to admit her feelings to him. In the next scene, we meet Rumi Hizutome as she's about to begin her storyline, but she leaves and we don't see her again. Meanwhile, Rokuro's reading about the trigger conditions for the Tour of Rabbituza unique scenario. He learns that if you defeat a monster of a higher level than you with Vorpal weapons equipped, a special Vorpal bunny will appear in any town and invite you to Rabbituza. Once you arrive, if you defeat the Ligonian Python, a monster terrorizing their city, you'll learn the Enchant Vorpal spell. The beginning part was right, but Rokuro explains that the rest of his unique scenario that happened the day before was nothing like that. He definitely didn't end up wrestling any pythons. Instead, it was the intimidating Yakuza boss looking bunny, the sort of cuddly terror you would expect if the mob started recruiting in petting zoos. A look back shows that Visach complimented Rokuro on his fight against the puppy. He admires Rokuro's Vorpal soul, but Rokuro can't help but be intimidated and wonders what in the world is a Vorpal soul. The Yakuza bunny then makes him an offer he can't refuse, the offer to get him up to snuff. Rokuro's pretty confused at first, but then realizes that this must be a training quest, and unique scenario training could yield amazing buffs. He quickly accepts the offer but almost gets himself whacked when he calls Visach Aniki, as it made him very angry. Rokuro explains that it was just a little joke, but the giant Bugs Bunny on steroids doesn't say a word. Luckily for Rokuro, Visach has a sense of humor as he doesn't call a hit on him and lets out a big laugh instead. He acknowledges Rokuro as his underling and asks him to call him Vash. This is a privilege only given to those with potential, and Rokuro accepts as he thinks about how he is glad that this Yakuza bunny didn't have him swimming with the fishes. Vash tells the more than excited Emil that he will leave Rokuro in his hands, which of course the weird little bunny loves, and he promises to work super hard. Emil is excited to take Sunraku-san on a tour of the palace, but Rokuro explains that he needs a break after a long playing session. But in his head, he thinks about how he also wants to look up more about unique scenarios and unique monsters. Rokuro's glad to hear that he can register his respawn point there, and Emil offers to take care of it. Vash remembers that he forgot one thing, and puts a Vorpal Soul collar on Rokuro. Rokuro is shocked to find that the collar gains 2.5 times the stat points when leveling up, but will only receive half the experience. He instantly tries to take it off, but Vash explains that it's no use. He won't allow Rokuro to take it off since extraordinary hardship is necessary for the weak to grow strong. He then reminds Rokuro to never forget the Vorpal Soul. The goofy little bunny tells him that it looks great on him, but Rokuro just can't believe that he has been saddled with another restriction. Back to the present, Rokuro acknowledges that even if it does have his experience, getting 2.5 times the stat points is a pretty big upside. It might even be a broken cheat code. No one on the forum seems to know about Visach or Emil, let alone the Vorpal Soul collar. No one's even found a unique scenario where you enter the palace of Rebetuza. Rokuro then gets super hyped as he realizes how amazing it is to have found a unique scenario only he knows about. Unfortunately, he has an appointment with someone named Katsuo and loads up a game he hasn't logged into in forever. It's called Berserk Online Passion, or as some people call it, Burp. It's a fighting game Rokuro once got deeply into, and naturally this means that it's a trash game. Its player base has waned to less than 100 sign-ins per day, leaving many to wonder why the server is still running. This means that most of those who remain playing the game know each other. They are all of a single kind, trash game enthusiasts. Rokuro meets with Katsu and asks for the rules of the fight. The fight begins though as Katsu does his best impression of Luffy without a straw hat and reminds Rokuro that anything goes. Katsu shows him his new move he worked out while Rokuro was focused on Follia Online, that he calls NSFW Tentacle Attack. Rokuro is surprised to see that Tatsu developed a new glitch and wonders how a madman like him got to be a pro gamer. Katsu is shocked since he is using a delay, but Rokuro is still somehow managing to block his attack. Katsu calls Rokuro the real madman for having such fast reaction speed, and Rokuro points out that his quick draw fist is the ultimate fighting style. He explains that as long as he has 12 frames, he can even counter boss insta-kill attacks unscathed. The two continue their fight that looks like something right out of One Piece, and people around begin to take notice. Though Burp is considered a trash game, their fight perfectly demonstrates the reason for Burp's niche appeal, and that is that any bug goes. Their Gatling gun punching continues, and Rokuro celebrates when he breaks off one of Katsu's fists. Unfortunately, this ends up being bad for him, as that fist ends up ending the fight. Rokuro can't believe that the after-image fist textures were part of the hitbox, and he has announced the loser. Still, Rokuro thanks Katsu as he has only been fighting NPCs recently and needed a good PvP. Katsu hoped that Rokuro was telling a bad joke when he learned that he was playing SLF, but Rokuro takes no shame in admitting that he is actually really into it. His little friend still doesn't understand, so Rokuro explains that SLF has crazy strong monsters called the 7 Colossi. They are so rare that the entire player base has only managed to get the names of 4 of them. No one has ever beaten a single one of them since the game started. Rokuro reveals that he fought one of these beasts and it wasted him. With that, Katsu is convinced and he decides that he might have to give SLF a try. Hearing Rokuro talk about it has piqued his interest, and he admits that none of his IRL friends play Burp anyway. That isn't all, as a certain person also plays SLF, and Katsu sent this person a message to tell them that Rokuro was playing it too. Rokuro has no clue who this person is, but we see that it's some purple-haired girl. This chick is fighting a bunch of guys when she received the message and states that she always thought Rakuro had some kind of condition where he would die if he ever stopped playing trash games. She finishes up all her opponents, and we see that she has the player kill badge for ending all those real players. She seems glad that Rakuro is playing SLF and decides that she will have to oh so gently guide him through it. Rakuro returns to Secondale and thinks about how handy Emil is for being able to use a teleport gate. He feels pretty good and wonders if coming from playing Burp is the reason that his SLF avatar is so easy to move in. Emil wonders why Rakuro wanted to leave so soon since there is so much to do in Rabbituza. Rakuro explains that while he really wants to explore Rabbituza, getting to 3rd Rima before the crowds start pouring in is more important. There has been a huge uptick in players since summer break started. The forums report that the Star Town Firstia is packed to the gills with new players. Segondia won't be far behind, which means there are going to be logjams at facilities and fights over monsters and mining spots. Also, 3rd Rima is a pretty big city, so if he's going to go all out in the Rabbituza unique scenario, then he would like to do it from a big city with plenty of breathing room. Emil completely agrees, but Rakuro is shocked to hear that Emil hilariously didn't understand a single thing. Emil is still more than glad to help, and Rakuro is shocked to find that he can add NPCs in his party. Emil explains that Rakuro can't reach Rabbituza or the palace without him, but Rakuro thought that the little furry NPC would just be tagging along. Rakuro accepts Emil's party request and finds that the little bunny has higher stats than he does. He isn't too concerned about it though, since he is confident that he will pass Emil in no time. Rakuro is pretty sure that the Lycagon's mark is the trigger for that unique scenario, and wonders if Emil is the game's way of making up for it. The two prepare to head out, but are stopped by 2 girls who think that the talking little bunny is adorable. They want to know if they can get it as a pet too, but are shocked to realize that Rakuro is a half-naked bird pervert. Rakuro realizes that he was so distracted that he didn't stop to think about how Emil is an NPC attached to a never-before-seen unique scenario. Since he has it all to himself for now, he would like to keep it a secret at least until he can clear it. The dumb little bunny introduces himself and tries to chat it up with the ladies. However, Rakuro stops him and yells out that it was just his ventriloquism act as he runs away. Unfortunately for him, one of the nosy girls takes a picture of them and decides that they will have to ask the forums where to get one of the talking bunnies. The two get away from all the crowds, and Emil admits to not being the high-level athlete he looks like, as he is not so well suited for all the running around. Emil eagerly awaits their next task, and Rakuro explains that he wants to confirm something. He wants to test a part of his curse that says that monsters of a lower level than the afflicted character will flee. Luckily for them, a lower leveled monster appears to attack them, and it runs away as soon as it sees the curse. This is perfect as Rakuro chases after it like some kind of bird-cheetah hybrid. Our brilliant gamer doesn't just pursue it mindlessly though, as he has a plan to chase it into an obstacle. With perfect timing, Rakuro throws his weapon as soon as it changes direction. With it stopped, Rakuro attacks it with the fastest speed he can muster. Rakuro points out that he received an attack bonus from inertia, a law of physics taken for granted in the real world, and very few games actually try to replicate it. He admires how this game models reality as close as it can, and Emil arrives to celebrate with intense energy as always. He admires Rakuro's fighting skills as he could hardly tell which one was the monster. With Rakuro's test complete, he has decided what needs to be done now. The plan is to ignore all the scrubs and head straight to the area boss. Emil marvels at the plan's simplicity, and the two take off, excited to take on whatever the future holds. Unfortunately, just seconds later, we see that Rakuro is extremely frustrated. They have arrived at the area where the boss should be, but there's only swamp as far as the eye can see. The little rabbit is just worried about his sweet-looking clothes, and Rakuro thinks about what Emil told him on the way there. Emil explained that the area boss is a monster named Muddigger. It rockets out of the ground to attack, so it's crucial to find a way to hold it in place. Rakuro realizes that he has to fight this Muddigger in a swamp, and that means he might be in big trouble. Just then, Emil senses the beast, and Rakuro has Emil get on his shoulder. It's incredibly difficult to move in the swamp, so they just barely manage to move out of the way as the giant monster emerges. We learn that a characteristic of Shangri-La Frontiers is that its swamp terrain forces a walking state. This means that one leg always remains trapped in the marsh until the other foot reaches the bottom. This ferocious beast is clearly very powerful, as the recommended party size for fighting it is 4. Rakuro realizes that he might have made a huge mistake, as this is the worst matchup possible. The ferocious beast is strangely able to dive into the shallow swamp, which is only possible because of game logic, and Emil freaks out, fearing that they will be skinned alive. However, Rakuro smoothly uses his slide move to narrowly avoid death. He acknowledges that figuring out how to use the skills that evolved after fighting the Lycagon is the key to this battle. His evolution of the move Perfect Parry is the repel counter, which allows him to instantly counterattack after timing his parry perfectly. Emil is impressed, but Rokuro isn't satisfied since he is pretty much just evading damage. Both skills he just used have 10-second recast times, and he has no other way to avoid damage in the meantime. The beast gives him no breaks, but luckily his little bunny friend comes in clutch with an impressive attack. Emil explains that it was just a bit of magic, and Rokuro realizes that he has been so focused on soloing this game that he completely forgot he had a partner this time. Rokuro knows he can't waste this opportunity, so he uses an ability that grants a temporary bonus to attack power and agility. Unfortunately, trying to move quickly in the swamp sucks big time. The beast recovers, but this gives Rokuro the opportunity to use the evolution of his Screw Pierce attack called Spiral Edge. Another ability gets them in a more advantageous position, and Rokuro does a balancing act only possible because of his experience in trash games that have terrible platforming. He has his little bunny friend prepare an attack and dares the ferocious beast to eat him. It tries to, but 10 seconds have passed already, and he uses repel counter to avoid it. Emil follows that up with a powerful attack, and we see just how much of a glass cannon Rokuro is, as a tiny bit of fall damage takes a large portion of his health. Rokuro praises his furry teammate, but she is just concerned about her sweet threads. Rokuro is confident that the beast must be pretty hurt, but he is shocked when it's nowhere to be found. Just then, the ground begins to shake, and Rokuro feels like his feet are being sucked down. They realize that the shark whale thing is preparing to rocket out of the ground for an attack, and Rokuro doesn't even hesitate to save his little friend. Rokuro is surprised to have been thrown into the air since it wasn't an insta-kill attack, and in fact barely did any damage. We learn that the Mud Digger is most noteworthy for its special moveset that activates after its HP reaches a certain threshold. After holding a player in place with the vibrating swamp, it randomly rams one of them in the air with its nose. If a player challenges it alone, not only will it hit them with this attack every single time as long as they remain in the swamp, but it will shave down all their HP through fall damage, hence its nickname the Solo Killer. Rokuro realizes this and hates the person who came up with it since player skills are not even a factor. He considers having Emil hit him from the side, but knows that will just blow him up. Rokuro prepares for his inevitable death and explains that he has never been able to get used to falling deaths in VR games. Luckily for him, our little fur hero is no quitter, and she has an unrivaled Vorpal spirit. She uses a magic scroll to teleport Rokuro, but instead of getting to safety, she accidentally puts him back in the air. We learn that there is an attack skill called Meteor Fall that utilizes downward energy. Rokuro had picked up a ton of downward momentum from his initial free fall and built up a lot of energy. Emil's accidental teleportation actually put him just above the beast and allowed Rokuro to gain even more energy. So a fall that would have resulted in player death instead is now a risky attack. This is not an actual meteor fall, but a mistake meteor fall. The creature instantly blows up into smithereens, and Rokuro is in complete disbelief to see that he actually survived. He can't even digest all the things that just happened, so he just compliments Emil for her clutchness. Rokuro acknowledges how tough the fight was, comparing it to when he fought the Lycagon, but this time they were the survivors. Afterward, Emil is shocked to see Birdhead shove a bunch of healing herbs down his throat, and Rokuro points out that it's the only way anything can reach his mouth, because of his giant beak. Rokuro can only think about how Emil was way stronger than he expected. She ended up carrying him, so he feels pretty bad for being so cocky before. Emil can only think about how Rokuro will be staying in Rabbituza full time once they reach the big city. The only problem is that Emil, if seen, will draw a lot of attention like last time, and they might even get jumped. They need to think of a way to hide her, so our little furball determines that she must use something she hasn't in a long time. She reveals her mysterious Vorpal bracelet, the secret treasure of the Vorpal bunnies. The secretive little bunny asks her human counterpart to keep it a secret, and shockingly transforms into a human. Rokuro is speechless and is upset as he begins to realize that Japan's so-called flagship god-tier game is starting to look like some kind of harem game with a bunny girl. The transformation is pretty exhausting for the little rabbit though, so she can only hold it for 4 or 5 minutes at a time in her current state. Her transformation will work just fine to hide her, but it could bring different attention when people see a poor girl dragging around a half-naked birdman. They finally arrive at Third Rima, where Emil points out how unimpressed Rokuro seems. Beakface proudly points out that he has seen quite a few places in his time, and she is amazed by how well-traveled he is. Emil transforms, but Rokuro is proven right about him being the attention getter when some guards stop them to ask why he is half naked. They are also pretty curious about his body being covered in scars, but Imo comes to Rakuro's defense. She states that Rakuro has a past that will bring immense sorrow to all those who hear it. Imo tells the story of his dangerous journey in the most dramatic way possible. A story highlighting the curse Rakuro has on his body and his journey to remove it. Imo gets even more intense as she explains that this is only the first chapter in his story. The second chapter will have him transform into a super warrior. This chick is way too intense for the guards and they just allow them in. Out of the entire crowd that is gathered to watch Imo's theatrics, Rakuro notices someone giving him a look. And it's far different than the normal judgmental look he usually gets for being a half-naked bird face. Before they can enter the city, a girl urgently stops Rakuro as she recognizes him. Rakuro has no clue who this frantic girl is, but we see what happened after those girls in Secondale took their picture. The girls posted the picture on a forum and asked if anyone knew how to befriend the adorable bunny. The post spread rapidly as people were shocked to hear that a monster could talk and almost equally as shocked to see a half-naked birdman. The silvered-haired girl was more shocked than anyone. She was certain that the game only allowed players to tame dogs and cats, and determines that the bird must be cheating. As people questioned the ethics behind posting a picture of someone without their consent, the silvered-haired girl begins her mission to find the pigeon man. Other people were paying more attention to Rakuro in the picture. Many have not seen scars like his, especially since nothing like them exists in the character maker. Someone on the forums remembers that it's a curse that also serves as proof that the player has been acknowledged by the Night Emperor. This is only known though because some NPC mentioned it. Players are stunned to realize that this means Rakuro, who they know as Sanraku, his in-game name, has encountered the Lycagon. Some players know that the Lycagon is a random encounter, so it is possible for a beginner to run into it, but no one can figure out how this Sanraku guy managed to get acknowledged by it. A player named Orsalot responds on the forums, saying that he could spawn kill Sanraku until he tells him how to do it. Other players think about how dangerous this Orsalot guy is, as he is the esteemed leader of Ashura Kai, a clan infamous for being filled with player killers. Orsalot has his eyes set on Sanraku, so other players wonder if the Birdman will be okay. People discuss on the forums how if you player kill too much, and you get killed by a player or an NPC, all your items are lost, including stored ones. On top of that, the bounty gets paid from the player killer's own cash, so it's a pretty brutal system. One red-headed lady is particularly intrigued by Sanraku, and leaves a message on the forums with the hopes of him reading it. She tells him to speak to any player wearing the emblem of a wolf and a sword, as she would love to meet and talk with him. She expresses sorrow for him having so much of his information leaked, but explains that her Saiger clan can help protect him. Other players can see that several clans are showing interest in the now famous Sanraku, and point out how he is being treated like an event boss. The crazy silver-haired girl is the first to find him though, and she just wants to know how to tame a Vorpal bunny. While news of him has spread rapidly, this is Rakuro's first time hearing about it. He realizes it must have been from Secondale, but there's no way he's spilling the beans on the Vorpal bunny unique scenario. Just then, their conversation is interrupted by a surprise attack. The attacker says that it's not nice to keep things to himself, and everyone should share in the fun. This girl shocks Rakuro when she calls him Revolutionary Knight Sanraku-kun. Rakuro seems to know her as he states that the Great Pencil Knight has finally shown her face. This girl doesn't like how he is talking to a self-proclaimed beauty like herself, and explains to him that in this game she is not Pencil Knight. She shockingly removes her mask and tells him to refer to her as Arthur Pencilgon. Rakuro is stunned to see that she is not only level 99, but she also has the Skull Badge for being a player killer. Rakuro refers to this person as his friend in Trash Gamerhood. A flashback shows some guys robbing a shop in a game called Unite Rounds. These fools thought they were scot-free, but our boy Rakuro found them and robbed the robbers. The players affectionately call this trash game a post-apocalyptic looting simulator. The game was originally meant to simulate a kingdom on the verge of collapse, with players assuming the role of knights who protect it from attacking monsters, a co-op MMO VR game. However, because of truly garbage game design that prioritized faithfulness to the concept, the drop rates were unreasonably low. Only a few players would ever dare to play this game the right way. Even the beginner's quest required 12 hours of combing through open fields to complete. In the player's eyes, this only left them with one option: steal what they need. Gamers weren't willing to spend hours picking through grass for low-level items when they could just raid an NPC store or steal them from a player who did. That eventually proved to be the winning move in Unite Rounds. In an environment where outrage was everywhere and every person you saw was an enemy, a lone figure arose, fueled by violence, to take control of the kingdom. And that person was the Great Pencil Knight. One day, Rakuro was looting corpses and Katsu tried to point out that the game was supposed to be about defending the kingdom from monsters. However, Rakuro explained that the game is now really about defeating the big bad Pencil Knight. Pencil Knight was nothing like the final boss built into the game's story. She would intentionally abuse players who she didn't allow into her ranks and instigate her victims to prevent them from giving up on the game. At this time, the game of Unite rounds was completely at the mercy of one player, the one known as the Dystopian Empress. Rakuro and Katsu plan to assassinate her, and she is shocked to see them and realize that a rebel army was used as a distraction. Our boys are pretty confident to have gotten this far and tell her that she should have set some more effective traps. The ones she set were so easy that they broke them on the first try. This is their first time meeting, but the Empress is impressed and plans to remember their names. The Pencil Knight is pretty annoyed by Rakuro's smirk, and she wonders if they can really defeat her to become the Revolutionary Knight. Back to the present, Rakuro thinks about how in Unite rounds, they fought each other to a draw, with both of them dying in the end. However, in this game, there's a huge level gap between them. Pencilgon instantly initiates the fight and tells Rakuro that she took the penalty and came all the way from Fetisha to player kill him. So he shouldn't be ashamed if he feels like crying because of how flattered he is. Pencilgon is not only a good trash talker, she is a dangerous fighter also, as Rakuro must block daggers that he predicts are poisonous. She knows that Rakuro just beat the Mud Digger and assumes that he's around level 30, so she compliments him on his impressive dodging skills. However, Rakuro credits the god tier game for making all his moves come nice and smooth. The crazy silver-haired girl is shocked while watching the fight when she realizes that Pencilgon is second in command of that one player killer clan, Ashura Kai. She is known as the Giant Killer. Pencilgon explains that she got the nickname from constantly focusing on ambushing higher level players. Unfortunately, the devs nerfed her ruthless strategy, so it's been a lot harder for her recently. Rakuro is quick to point out how she was the giant in the last game, and the two have a good laugh about the irony. The lighthearted moment doesn't last long though, as Pencilgon continues attacking, and calls our bird-headed hero a bird brain. Emo realizes something while watching, but doesn't say anything and just freaks out in the background. As Pencilgon continues her relentless attack, she reveals that she didn't just find him for personal reasons. The leader of her clan, Ashura Kai, asks her to deliver a message. The leader warns Rakuro to make the information of the unique scenario public, otherwise he will have a target on his back until he does. Our boy does not like being threatened. He thinks this leader of hers sounds like a dummy, and Pencilgon actually agrees. Rakuro does his best to fight back, but he knows that there's far too much of a gap in their levels and equipment. However, he has realized something. Rakuro points out that it seems like Pencilgon is trying pretty hard to keep him away from the gate. He is also certain that she timed that first attack of hers to prevent him from entering the city. He determines that it must be hard for a player killer to do their thing in a highly populated town, and she reveals that she would certainly prefer to avoid it. None of the talking really matters to her though, since she is certain that he won't be making it to the gate alive anyway. Just then, we see what Emo is freaking out about this whole time as her bunny tail reappears, and she can't hold it in any longer. She will soon transform back to a Vorpal bunny, but she has no way of telling Rakuro without anyone finding out. The chaos is mounting as the crazy silver-haired girl decides to ask Rakuro's companion about how to get the Vorpal bunny pet. She's surprised to see that Emo's wearing bunny accessories, but even more shocked when Emo transforms into the very bunny she had been desperately searching for like a maniac. Rakuro notices and points out how this is the worst possible moment for this to happen. Pencilgon refuses to be ignored, but is shocked when Rakuro uses his repel counter move. He knocks her back with rage since he knows that she has been holding back, and calls Emo to his side. Our boy catches his little bunny companion, and Silverhair wishes she could at least get a selfie with the little furball. Rakuro explains that he will think about it if he survives his plan, and makes a mad dash towards the gate. Pencilgon is certain that Rakuro has no chance in beating her in a foot race, but is shocked when Silverhair stops her. Silverhair explains that she couldn't care less about Birdface, but if Pencilgon's going to put the sweet little bunny in danger, then she will slay Pencilgon in a heartbeat. Rakuro couldn't be happier, as this is what he hoped would happen. He realized that the girl named Animalia was obsessed with his furry companion, and he knew she would put herself in harm's way for her. He praises Emo for being a great mascot, as now all he has to do is get into town. Emo will make him a teleport gate to Rabatuza, and no one should be able to track him there. Rakuro's plan runs into a huge problem though, as Pencilgon explains that she never said she came there alone. Rakuro is met by a group of tough-looking players from Pencilgon's clan. They all hate the idea of having to PK a lower level player, but they must do it as they fear getting player killed themselves by Pencilgon if they don't. Pencilgon realizes that Animalia is the keeper of SF Zoo, a monster documenter clan with no interest in other players, and she thanks Rokuro for giving her this opportunity. Rokuro isn't even listening though, as he has his hands full trying to keep from being ended by the group. Animalia shows that she isn't just some crazy animal lover and unleashes a powerful spell. Unfortunately, Pencilgon consumes the attack and fires it right back at Animalia. Pencilgon is pretty impressed by all the status debuffs Animalia has acquired, and Animalia is shocked because Pencilgon was able to reflect all the curses in her attack. Pencilgon reveals the amazing item that allowed her to do this, the Karmic Straw Doll. Pencilgon knows she would have been in big trouble without it and crushes the thing. The item, when crushed, sends all curses applied to the player back at their caster, so the cold-blooded Pencilgon assures Animalia that she will stick around to watch her die of her own poison. Rokuro's doing his best to stay alive against opponents who outnumber him, are a higher level than him, and have far better equipment than him. He analyzes them to determine that his best target is the jerk who uses a slow-moving longsword, since Rokuro doesn't even need skills to dodge his attacks. The real problem is how he will do damage to the high-level players decked out in top-tier armor. Things are looking pretty bad, but luckily someone has arrived to absolutely destroy one of the attackers with a single blow. Every one of the attackers is shocked as they realize that this was the unparalleled firepower of the famous Attack Master. Rokuro has no clue who this person is, but can't believe another person has arrived with such a dangerous sounding nickname. However, we know that this giant armored knight is actually Rokuro's stalker, Rei, and she's glad to have finally found the apple of her eye. A flashback shows how upset Rei was after not being able to find Rokuro no matter how hard she looked, and she thought about how Mana told her to confess her feelings to him. She thought about how Rokuro always played games that were so unusual and difficult. They were always too hard for her to play, so she could never find a game that she could play with him. However, that all changed with SLF. Rokuro was finally playing it, so she refused to let her opportunity get away. When she returned to the game, she found that a message was waiting for her. It was another member of her guild, Saiger, that is also her sister. The message revealed Rokuro's location and asked Rei to get into contact with him. This was Rei's first real chance to find him, so she wasted no time in rushing to him. The message also revealed that there were a number of clans already arranging to make contact with him, and the dangerous Ashura was among them. Rei saw him deep in battle and realized that it was a great opportunity that she would never have again. If she could save him from the PKers, she would have a natural in to talk to him. This drove her more than anything because she's crushing on him pretty hard and knew that this could someday lead to them talking in real life. That is when she made her explosive entrance, and Pencilgon could instantly tell that things were getting intense. Pencilgon knew all along that the PKers from her clan would have a tough time against Rokuro. However, fighting him in SLF has made something even more clear to her. The skills he's built up playing terrible games in all genres are more valuable than unique items and high-level stats, and that's a huge asset in Shangri-La Frontier. She has also heard that Katsuo is playing SLF as well, so with Rokuro, some secret project of hers is looking more possible. Pencilgon is then shocked when she realizes that the person that has joined the fight is Saiger Zero. Somehow, Rokuro first lured in the Zookeeper and now the Attack Master. Pencilgon is incredibly happy to have come, but Animalia isn't done just yet, as she points out that she hit Pencilgon with 5 spells. She explains that the doll Pencilgon used tops out at reflecting 5 debuffs, and she wonders if Pencilgon has a counter for her next attack. A look into the past shows Rei stalking Rokuro so hard that she runs into a pole. He was always smiling and enjoying himself, so that is why she started thinking about him. She started looking for him and eventually developed elite level stalking skills. She tried talking to him on several occasions, but she was always too shy. Back to the present, Rei won't let her opportunity pass her by, so she comes to Rokuro's rescue. Rokuro is instantly suspicious of this giant knight, and he assumes that they are after the unique scenario just like everyone else. He knows that he needs to think of a way out, and luckily for him, it looks like Animalia is preparing to do something. Animalia's final attack requires the mastery skill and single-digit HP. This chick is just another crazy person in this anime, as she explains that her next attack is a murder-suicide curse that destroys her opponent and herself. Pencilgon has already used her doll and has no way to debuff the spell, so the two of them are eliminated. The attack causes a massive eruption of light, shocking everyone, but this is Rokuro's chance. He tells his furry little friend to prepare a gate for them and apologizes to the knight for using its head as a launch pad. Birdface runs as fast as he can, and the enemy group wants to stop him from reaching the city since it's filled with bounty hunters. Unfortunately for them, Rei is too powerful and knocks them back. Rokuro still doesn't trust the giant knight, but promises to remember their name, Saiger Zero. The Ashura members are furious, but Rei is completely distracted. She can't believe that Rikuro actually talked to her, and his apology replays over and over again in her head. The Shurikai guys see this as an opportunity to earn some fame, and make an attempt to attack the attack master. Unfortunately for them, she is furious because they were the reason she couldn't talk to Rikuro more. The Shurikai members prepare to run away, but Rei doesn't let them, as she still has a lot of anger to take out on them. We then see that Rikuro and Imo have finally made it back to the inn inside of Rabbituza. Imo ran out of magic from using her transformation earlier, but luckily our boy was prepared, and bought magic restoring items ahead of time. Just then, Rikuro receives what he calls a sore loser email from Pencilgon. She's in disbelief that the attack master appeared from nowhere to save him, and she points out that her death was her own fault, so she didn't really lose to him. Pencilgon still wants to talk to Rokuro, so she tells him to call Katsuo so the three of them can have a meeting in the game Unite rounds. It's a bit strange that she doesn't just want to talk in SLF, so he is suspicious of her. Just then, Katsuo emails him after he was messaged by Pencilgon as well. Katsuo shares Rikuro's skepticism, but they are both also very intrigued by what she might have to say. They decide not to back down, but for now Rikuro has bigger things to worry about. Imo finishes her delicious potion, and Rikuro eagerly explains that he is ready to get this unique scenario going. Rikuro wonders what the Mafia Rabbit boss meant by getting him up to snuff, so Imo decides to just show him by taking Rikuro to the arena where they do their most serious battle training. They arrive at the Vorpal Coliseum, and Rikuro marvels at how huge it is. Imo reveals that her father/boss wants Rikuro to fight 10 monsters there. Rikuro is excited for this boss rush type of training, and Imo explains that he will be strictly limited to the use of Vorpal weapons. That's totally fine for our boy, and he prepares to grind levels until he can wipe the smug smirk off of Pencilgon's face. Rikuro gets a good stretch in before pulling out his Vorpal Blades of Death, and has the first monster come out. Our protagonist is pretty realistic, as he doesn't expect to go 10 in a row on his first try. He plans to use trial and error to learn their attack patterns so he can slowly but surely attain victory. He is pretty shocked by his first opponent though, since it's a pack of hounds that always spawn in groups of 5 or more. Their average level is 65, so Rikuro wonders if there has been some kind of mistake. His ruthless little bunny friend explains that there's no mistake, and that's just how the first opponent works. Rikuro knows he has his hands full and is instantly wiped out by the pack. Back in the real world, Rei celebrates the fact that Rikuro talked to her, and she replays the moment in her mind. That isn't enough for the little stalker though, as she reminds herself to find the courage to send him a friend request the next time they see each other. She wonders if he would accept, and imagines our boy saying yes. Rei imagines that they will become friends in real life after that, and this sends her over the roof with joy. The problem is that she searched for him in 3rd Rima after she was done with the goons, but couldn't find him, so she wonders what he could be doing. We then see what he is doing as he stares down the hounds. It's pretty clear that these hounds just think of him as food, and Imo points out that this is already Rikuro's 7th attempt. Thankfully, the penalty for dying isn't applied in the arena. However, it's not just the sheer number of these beasts and their high level that is a huge pain for our beak-faced hero, it's their completely synchronized attacks. Rikuro does his best on the 7th try, and he realizes that their coordination is the result of having a commander giving orders. He has fought them enough times, so he has started to see it. One of these monsters has been howling from a safe distance and never actually fights. Armed with this knowledge, our boy uses his spiral edge attack on their leader. This monster just runs away while the others rush to protect it. Their coordination gets all out of whack, so he knows that he was right. Knowing this, all Rikuro has to do is ignore the others and focus on the commander before he can bark out orders. He hunts down the leader of the pack, and Imo cheers for him when he eliminates it. With their master gone, there's really nothing left for him to fear, so he wipes out the uncoordinated bunch. Rikuro completes the first level of training, and Imo celebrates her bird-faced hero. Rikuro hopes that the next round won't be another group of monsters, and Imo assures him that the next one is definitely a single opponent. He really hopes that's the case, but is shocked when he sees that the next opponent is called the Parasite Tentacle. This hideous creature is just a teddy bear with snakes coming out its back, so this makes Rikuro think that it's practically another group. Rikuro used a hit and run strategy against the beast's tentacles. Once all the tentacles were severed, the bear stopped moving and he won. It only took him 4 tries. A really tough goblin was his 3rd opponent, but it was easier than the previous 2. This one only took him 2 tries. Some wild boar was his 4th opponent, but our boy has some in-game rodeo experience and used that to defeat it on his first try. His 5th opponent was a doozy though. It was some crazy acid-pooping bird, and this thing took him 112 tries. The next few opponents were relatively easy and only took him 1 try each. Our hero's 9th opponent was some Mega Golem. It had some type of invisible energy shield that shaved off 70% of his HP when repelled by it. He eventually figured out that he needed to tear it down little by little, and he defeated it on his 7th try. Our boy is more excited than ever as he only has one opponent left, but is pretty upset to see that after all that fighting, he has only gone up 2 measly levels. This is of course because of the Vorpal Soul Collar that Vash forced onto him, which generously cuts his experience gains in half. Emil encourages the bird brain to take a break since she has noticed that Rakuro has a terrible look in his eyes. Our boy doesn't think so though and makes a funny looking face as he states that all the optimization is going great for him. Rakuro demands that the next monster come forward and he is shocked to see that Vash has come for a visit. Vash is impressed that Rakuro has already reached the final level and points out that the timing couldn't be any more perfect. Rakuro knows that there was no coincidence as he thinks about how beating the 9th monster just triggered an event flag. Vash explains that for Rakuro's final opponent, he will have him fight a monster that he just caught. Vash really had to go out of the way to get this monster, and he sends the chained up beast into the arena. Vash frees the creature and our boy can't figure out what kind of monster it is. He thinks it's some dummy from long ago that tried to fuse with a tree to gain a longer life. Vash observes closely and doubts that Rakuro can beat this monster in his current state. Because of this, he changes the win criteria. This monster is apparently insanely strong, so all Rakuro will have to do to win is survive for 5 minutes. This thing is a wood mage, but Rakuro is eager to prove that he can complete the level. Rakuro is confident for this test of endurance, but is instantly surprised by the monster's first attack. This crazy tree thing creates roots out of nowhere and forces Rakuro to run for his life. Vash explains that he is a big fan of Rakuro's confidence, but points out that he will really have to back it up now if he wants to survive. Rakuro's getting pretty stressed evading all of its attacks and realizes that it's going to be a really long 5 minutes. Out of the over 30 million SLF players, Rakuro is the first one to fight this terrifying monster. Rakuro wouldn't learn this until far in the future, but we see that this tree mage is an insane level 120. Rakuro does his best to avoid all the roots, but they are seemingly endless. Our boy is crazy as he attempts to close the gap with the monster even though all he needs to do is survive. Getting close doesn't do much though since Rakuro's attack doesn't even scratch the tree branch wizard. It's pretty clear that physical attacks won't work on it, and Rakuro must now dodge this thing's chains as well. The bird brain realizes that he should just dodge his way to victory, and Emil reveals that 1 minute has already passed. 4 minutes remain, so Vash is eager to see Rakuro's Vorpal Soul. Rakuro continues to dodge away, but it's getting more difficult, and he realizes that his opponent is an absolute beast. Root spear attacks that are almost impossible to dodge since they aren't telegraphed, and chains that look like they will destroy anything they come in contact with. As if those things weren't terrifying on their own, they also chase him around like he is a magnet to them. It's almost enough to make him give up on dodging altogether, and Emil becomes increasingly concerned for him. Even with all that, there is still something worse. This tree monster keeps on slipping in magic attacks every now and then. Some are electrical and some are fireballs. The more time passes, the more this wooden Harry Potter mixes up its magic types. This time it uses an ice spell attack, and Rua can hardly manage to survive it all as the attacks seem to be getting denser as well. The number of chains and roots are increasing, and the magic attacks are starting to cover a wider area. The magical tree branch gives a menacing look, and Rakuro determines that if the density of the attacks keep increasing, he will be dead well before he reaches 5 minutes. Just then, purple mist erupts from the ground, and it's just another spell from the tree's arsenal that Rakuro has to worry about. The fight is beginning to seem futile since this thing can nullify physical attacks and constantly adds attacks of its own. Rakuro begins to think that he would have a better chance against the Lycagon that gave him his scars, and he really begins to lose hope. He is getting so tired that he can barely even think straight anymore. Rakuro is ready to give up, return home to eat something while he thinks of a strategy, and try again later. There isn't really a penalty for losing, so he doesn't really care anymore. Just then, Rakuro snaps himself out of it, and reminds himself that he isn't a pushover. He went through the same feeling of hopelessness against the Mud Digger when he gave up and had to rely on Emil. Rakuro lets out a battle cry as he is reinvigorated, and refuses to let himself cut corners. He thinks that playing so many trash games all his life almost turned his brain into garbage as well, but that ends now. Emil and Vash can sense that something has changed, and Rakuro makes another push. He states that he has overloaded on trash gamium and needs to balance it out with god gamium. Rakuro runs along a route to once again get close to the tree and promises himself that he won't give up. Vash is impressed that he was able to break through the waves of attacks to reach melee range, but says that there really is no point since Rakuro can only dish out basic attacks. Rakuro shocks everyone though when he kicks the monster's staff out of its hand. Rakuro is seriously tired, so he's ready to just beat the living tree and go straight to bed. He realized that even though the monster can nullify physical damage, the attack itself still gets through. Rakuro doesn't let the tree branch get its staff back, and he wonders what will happen to the tree if it has to fight without it. It's clear that it can't cast its spells anymore, but it still has its roots in chains. Something that Rakuro did learn from all his years of gaming is that in a post-apocalyptic world, you survive by looting. He uses the snatching skills he learned from Unite rounds and grabs hold of the staff. Vash and Emil are both impressed, but there's still 2 minutes left on the timer, and this is the time when Vash wants to see what Rakuro can really do. The tree goes insane and Rakuro realizes that losing the staff must trigger its berserk mode. The attacks are getting more intense, so Rakuro wishes he would have gotten some kind of warning. Little Emil continues cheering on our brave hero and tells him that he only needs to survive for 1 more minute. This is exactly what Rakuro's mobility build was made for, so there's no way he's going to lose after getting so close. However, one of the chains eventually grabs a hold of him, and just as he expected, it applies several debuffs. He won't be able to dodge, and the tree wizard is closing in on him. Rakuro sends the staff straight into the sky, causing the tree to go after it instead. The tree finally retrieves it, but Rakuro can't believe that the monster actually fetched it. Rakuro mocks the dumb monster since it would have won if it just kept attacking, but now the time is up. He calls it a wood blockhead, but is shocked when the monster just decides to continue attacking. Rakuro runs for his life while pointing out that the fight should be over. Luckily, Vash steps in since the 5 minutes are over and completely deletes the monster right out of the game. Rakuro is the winner, and Vash is really impressed by his Vorpal soul. Rakuro can't believe Vash just decimated it and wonders how he was able to land a physical attack on it. Vash explains that it can only nullify physical attacks when it has its staff, and without its staff, it's just an animated tree. Emil arrives to celebrate, and Rakuro is excited to hear that he will now be getting his reward for completing the quest. Vash declares him an honorary Rabbituzin, but Rakuro thought winning would come with a rare item or something. Vash removes the Vorpal collar around Rakuro's neck, officially completing the unique scenario, and the little rabbits leave. Surprisingly, there is a bonus unique scenario called Vorpal Epic. However, Rakuro's just upset that he didn't get a single piece of real loot and logs out of the game. It's pretty late, so Rakuro decides to just get some sleep. The next morning, Rakuro reads that the recommended level for the bonus unique scenario is 80, but he's only level 31. There is lore behind the quest, but he gave up on reading it all when he was overwhelmed. There are entire clans dedicated to learning all the lore in the game, so it would be very difficult for him to do so on his own. Rakuro decides to take a break from all the unique scenario stuff. Instead, he will check out the town and head for the next area. Emil finishes up watering her plants and is ready to move forward as well. Rakuro realizes that if he goes out looking like he does, then he will surely get mobbed by PKers and info hunters again. Changing his headgear won't be enough either, since his Lycaga marks would draw attention too. Emil proves to be as useful as ever and recommends that he cover his entire form. He has no clue how to do that, but she knows just the place. They go to see a little rabbit named Peets, who is actually Emil's little brother. He acquires goods and sells them in Rabbituza. He sells in other places as well, but he has to transform into a human to do it, so he doesn't do it much. The little bunny calls him a birdman, so Rakuro proves he is a human by removing his mask. Emil is shocked that he removed his mask for a moment, since she was sure that he had some deep dark reason for keeping it on all the time. Emil asks about the rare thing that Peach just found, and he goes looking for it in his inventory. Afterwards, we see that this item looks like some kind of bed sheet, and Rakuro looks like he's wearing a ghost costume on Halloween. They go to get a map for the area around Third Rima, and Rakuro gets all sorts of weird looks. Moments later, Rakuro can't hold back anymore, and states just how much he hates the bedsheet costume looking thing. Rakuro calms down as he realizes that at least he got everything he needed. Rakuro points out that Emil burns through magic power really fast when in human form, as she chugs down another potion. They need to get moving to the next area, and they have 3 routes they can take. One is the Felfate Caldera, a place where water has collected in the crater of a long extinct volcano to form a lake. The second is the Prismatic Forest Grotto, a maze of caverns overgrowing with plant life. The last route is the Iron Ruins of Divinity, ruins from the era of Divinity that gets its name from its many hovering iron boards. Rakuro realizes the seriousness of this decision and tells Emil to quiet down when she recommends going to the Felfate Caldera. Rakuro decides to go through the prismatic forest and explains his brilliant decision. He declares that they must avoid the ruins of divinity at all costs because he believes it's a trap. While Rakuro is busy complimenting his own genius, Imo notices a person she kind of remembers watching them. This armored person looks like a creepy stalker, and Rakuro is shocked to see who it is. Elsewhere, we find a ship parked somewhere, and we meet the leader of the clan of Shurikai called Orsalot. He is disappointed in his clan for failing him and disgracing their clan. They apologize and blame their failure on the arrival of the attack master. Orsalot doesn't want to hear any excuses though. The secret of a unique scenario is on the line, so they should have expected top players to show up. Pencilgun is part of this clan and fearlessly tells Orsalot that he should have just done it himself. He says that he was busy and explains that the rabbit they are after is definitely the key to a bunch of secret stuff. Orsalot wants answers, so he tells the group to get them out of Rakuro by any means necessary. Pencilgun thinks that they should be going after unique monsters instead, but Orsalot reminds her that these monsters aren't made to be beatable. As of right now, they are the only ones that know the unique monster spawn condition. Players get experience just by encountering the beast, so if they plan it correctly, they can use it to get way stronger. Everyone agrees not to go after the monster, but Pencilgun thinks that they are all useless. Orsalot tries to stop her from leaving, but she has important things to do. A Shurikai was always widely hated on, so they decided to thrive on hate. However, the last patch made player killing much riskier, so the clan has changed. Pencilgun can't believe that she's putting her neck on the line for one little NPC, and states that it's a huge gamble for her, win or lose. She is willing to sacrifice everything to bury the unique monster, one of the 7 Colossi, called Weatherman the Tomb Guard. Back with our bird-headed hero, Rakuro was worried that Saiger Zero is there to get revenge for stepping on him. Saiger Zero moves towards them, but Rakuro is terrified and tells Imo that it's time to run. Nearby, members of a Shurikai are looking for Rakuro. Rakuro runs near them, but they just think he is some crazy dude wearing a bedsheet. Unfortunately, players' names hover above their head, so the guys notice that it's Rakuro's in-game name Sunraku. They won't be confused by his ghost costume and chase after him. He is causing quite a scene, but he doesn't have much of a choice as the night is following him. Rakuro tells Imo that it's time to head to the next area, and the Shurikai guys determine that the bird brain will be heading to the Iron Ruins. They contact their other members and prepare to have an ambush ready at the exit gate. Imo reminds Rakuro that he said they would be going to the Prismatic Forest Grotto, and he explains that he's going in the wrong direction to fake everyone out. He knows that they will be waiting for him at the gate, but he plans to lose them in an alley. His plan works as they lose sight of Rakuro and decide to just wait at the gate towards the Iron Ruins. Our genius protagonist disguised himself perfectly using his bedsheet and teaches Imo a thing or two about deception. They eventually reach their real destination, but are stunned when Saiger Zero appears behind them. Rakuro still thinks the giant knight is a guy and fears the worst. He gets a bit of relief though when Saiger Zero just sends him a friend request. Saiger Zero mumbles that she wants to be friends, but her voice is so low that Rakuro can't hear a single word. Rakuro begins to wonder if she is a girl, but becomes skeptical. He thinks she might be trying to get his guard down, but realizes that he would have been a goner already if the attack master wanted it. Rakuro has some serious trust issues and wonders if she's trying to befriend him so that he will spill the beans about the scenario. He determines that the giant knight must be plotting something since she was able to see through his disguise and determine his destination. Rakuro is confident though since he is a gamer who has been through all kinds of PvP before. He is ready for anything, so he plans to play right into her hands, and he is certain that he can still beat her. Rakuro accepts the friend request, and the little stalker's dream has finally come true. We then see that her finding him was complete luck, but she couldn't be happier. She tells Rakuro that she can help him through the game, but someone has seriously broken Rakuro's trust before. He takes her simple offer as proof that she is trying to get him in her debt so she can demand information from him. Rakuro declines her offer by saying that he doesn't want to get carried, so she apologizes and emphatically wishes him luck. Rakuro apologizes for using her giant head as a step stool before, but she says it's okay and he can do it any time. The two say goodbye and Rakuro thinks it's odd how she backed off so quickly. Imo thinks the knight looks pretty powerful, and Rakuro determines that Saiger Zero is probably around 4 or 5 times stronger than him. Imo says that Rakuro has a stronger Vorpal soul though, but our Birdman still has no clue what a Vorpal soul is. Ray just watches him leave, and Rakuro decides to just put the whole encounter behind him. Ray realizes that the girl he was with is an NPC, but doesn't care about anything when she remembers that Rakuro finally accepted her friend request. The Ashura Kai boys realize that they have been tricked and decide to head towards the prismatic forest. They spot the terrifying attack master just standing there though, and decide to run away instead. At the forest, our duo can finally relax, so Emo reverts back to being a bunny and our hero goes back to being a bird. The tunnel is covered in glowing moss, and Rakuro explains that he has seen tons of things while coming out of tunnels in other games. Guns aimed at him and beautiful shooting stars. However, this amazing forest trumps it all. The site is beautiful and the forest is home to very unique creatures. These include empire work bees and some insects that double as storage. Bugs are taking each other out left and right, and Rakuro gets excited as nothing beats entering a new area. Rakuro is a little low on cash from stocking up on items, so he decides to take down one of the storage bugs in hopes of finding a valuable item. He fails miserably though, and points out that the insect is pretty light on its wings despite its gigantic potbelly. It's still too slow for a bird like him, and Rakuro destroys it. Luckily he was right, as long as he doesn't damage the stomach, he can snag it as an item. Emo can't contain her excitement, and Rakuro decides that they should keep gathering up as many item drops as they can. Rakuro spots their next prey, and Emo's surprised to see that he bought a throwing knife at some point. Melee is his only combat option, but he got pretty traumatized from getting pooped on by the poop bird in the arena. The throwing knife is a consumable item, but it's a great way to attack from a distance. Rakuro uses the knife to attack a flower, but he knew all along that it was a camouflaged mantis. He demands that it turn into loot for him, and he destroys it. Emo cheers on her hero, and Rakuro explains that the mantis are pretty easy to defeat without their camouflage ambushing tricks. Rakuro checks his inventory to find that he has gotten a ton of loot already, but there's one creature he hasn't defeated yet. Just then, the ground shakes as that creature just so happens to appear. It's a giant beetle, and it's at least 5 meters long. It's drinking tree sap on the Empire Bee's turf, but the bees aren't having any of it. The bees attack the lone beetle, and Rakuro is amazed since they are clearly following their queen's orders. Our boy begins a play-by-play of the fight and points out that the beetle is hanging in there. Emo is next to do some color commentary, but she isn't too good at improvisation. The fierce battle rages on, and the beetle uses its horn to attack while making its way towards the bee's nest. Emo is finally ready to jump in with commentary, but simply says that the beetle is big. Our boy steps up with more intense commentary and points out that the bees have created several weak points in the beetle's armor. The queen bee is just about to command her army to finish the fight, but the beetle shockingly goes straight for the queen. The beetle was just waiting to get into the queen's range and is now victorious. With no leader, the rest of the bees scatter, and the beetle goes back to munching on its meal. Rakuro admires the warrior beetle, but this beetle is insane, and it goes after them next. They run for their lives, and Rakuro tries to explain that he just wanted to collect the loot that the bees dropped. Emo points out that the beetle must have thought that they wanted his sap, and Rakuro comes up with an idea. He tosses a stomach sack, causing it to burst on a mantis, and the beetle goes after it instead. The tables have turned now, so Rakuro targets the cracks in the beetle's armor. He lands a ton of critical strikes thanks to his good luck, and the once proud warrior beetle is now a pile of nothing. Rakuro has an inventory full of stuff now, so he puts a hold on collecting more. Emo didn't like the idea of exploiting the labor of all the bees, but Rakuro explains that they live in a bug-eat-bug world. Rakuro remembers that the area boss there is a spider, and Emo explains that it's called the clown spider. There are spider webs everywhere now, so Rakuro assumes that they must be getting closer to the boss. Rakuro decides to fearlessly enter a cave, but we see that the terrifying spider is waiting for him. A quick look into the recent past shows another group, and one girl is terrified that their leader wants to fight the area boss so soon. Their leader tells her to quiet down as he is confident they can win, but this guy just ends up getting stuck on a spider web. The girls become terrified, and we see why, as they have just encountered the horrifying clown spider. Back to the present, Rakuro makes his way toward the cave. However, he is not allowed to enter as other players are currently fighting the area boss. The pink-haired guy from earlier comes crashing down and laments how he will have to climb all the way back up again. Pinky is still confident that he can turn this terrible situation around, but he just ends up getting flattened like a pancake. Rakuro says a prayer for the fallen adventurer, but he is ready for his turn now. The innocent little Emo is shocked that he's able to move on so fast, but Rakuro reminds her that players will just respawn right back in 3rd Rima. They make their way into the cave and find the corpses of the poor players that came before them. Rakuro shows his supreme confidence as he tells Emo to stay back. He plans to beat the clown spider all by himself without dying or taking damage. Emo thinks our boy is absolutely insane, but he has already made his decision, and he calls out the area boss. The higher up Rokuro climbs, the denser the webs get. Luckily, he has some new skills after leveling up in the arena. He tries to decide which would be best to use in this situation, but he must quickly turn his attention to avoid a falling boulder. He uses his new skill called One Boat Leap, and he's able to easily avoid it. Emo just barely manages to survive and warns our hero to be careful with the webs in front of him. She fears that he will get stuck to them, but is shocked when he doesn't. Our boy is some kind of spider expert, as he reveals that horizontal radial lines of spider webs aren't sticky. Some more rocks come crashing down, but he should be fine as long as he pays attention to where he is stepping. His carefulness combined with an acceleration skill allows him to climb much faster, and Emo is left to dodge falling rocks to save her life. Rokuro finally comes face to face with the clown spider and dodges a few of its pitiful attacks. Rokuro then uses a new skill called Loop Slash and slices off one of the spider's legs. That's clearly not enough to win, so he uses a skill called Rush Slash to do way more damage. The stupid spider isn't able to keep its balance, so it falls, and Rokuro determines that falling from this height will deal quite the fall damage. The spider tries to poop out some web to save itself, but our boy shuts that down instantly with his throwing knife. The spider slams down into the ground, and Rokuro already knows that it won't be enough to end its life. A look at the ceiling shows that this spider has a collection of heavy stuff to drop, so Rokuro comes up with an idea. The clown spider gets ready for round 2, but our boy has already started dropping boulders and trees to crush the spider. The spider is getting collapsed on, and Emo celebrates, as it really does seem like her hero will beat the spider unscathed. The spider begins to get up, and Emo wonders what our crazy protagonist is doing as he begins to descend. It turns out that Rokuro isn't satisfied by winning this way, since if he can't even beat a mere area boss head on, then he won't be good enough to take down the Lycagon. Rokuro comes crashing down on the spider to land a critical strike, and the area boss completely explodes. Emo then comes to celebrate as Rokuro is announced the winner. He beat it just like he promised, no damage and no death. Just then, he gets a message from the Pencil Knight, but he isn't the only one. Some blonde girl got the message too. She is pretty disappointed since she heard a lot of talk about bosses being tough to solo, but she just did it to the Mud Digger. This player is actually Katsuo, and she looks forward to something that will actually challenge her. Back at the game shop, Rei excitedly tells Mana that she doesn't have to stalk Rokuro like a creep anymore because they are friends now. Rei gushes over her crush since he was able to skip past First Town and has somehow brought with him an untamable Vorpal bunny. Rei gets excited when she thinks Rokuro has arrived at the shop, but it's just some random guy. It turns out that Rokuro hasn't come to the shop in several days, so Mana assumes that he is playing SLF. Rokuro is a pretty unpredictable guy, so she assumes that he will be the first one to defeat a unique monster. Rei walks home but is stunned when she just so happens to find our boy minding his own business in another store. Rei instantly goes back to her stalking ways and watches him closely. In a magazine, Rokuro reads about his friend Katsuo's interview. Katsuo is a pro gamer but also a massive trash talker. Rokuro also reads that a huge summer update will be coming to SLF, and he thinks about how he just had his meeting with Pencilgon. A look back at the meeting inside another game shows Pencilgon pointing out that it's been so long since her guests have visited. The last time they all saw each other was when they attacked her castle and took on the 80 players guarding it. Her guests are Rokuro and Katsuo. The two boys reminisce about how fun it was to destroy her castle, and they really dig in as they point out how Pencilgon is still really butthurt about it. Pencilgon gets their attention as she has had enough and reminds them that they have business to discuss. She gets right to the point and asks them to team up with her to beat a specific unique monster, Weathermon the Tomb Guard. The two boys ponder it for a moment, but then express how shocked they are. It's a unique monster just like the Lycagon Rokuro fought, so Katsuo is really interested in uniques. Pencilgon explains just how serious she is, but Rokuro thought they were just meeting to talk about fighting a high-level clan or something. Rokuro points out that it's just the three of them, and wonders if she really thinks they can do it themselves, as he has no clue about this Weathermon monster. Pencilgon explains that Weathermon is not the kind of guy that can be taken down with numbers. She tried with a team of Ashurikai's 15 best members, but they failed. It's the type of monster that gets stronger against more opponents, but that isn't all. Pencilgon then refuses to tell them more until they agree to join her. Her plan is to attack 2 weeks from now, At night, right after they push out the massive summer event. Rokuro thinks it over and wonders why she is asking 2 players that just started playing the game when she could just ask a couple of max level players. Pencilgon seems to be able to read his mind as she explains that their low levels don't matter. What she needs is pure gaming skills. That is why she chose Katsuo, who is a pro gamer, and Rokuro, who has godly skills as a trash game player. Rokuro wonders if their skills are really that comparable and gets upset when his buddy Katsuo doesn't think so. Pencilgon just wants their answers and is open to hearing what they would want as an extra reward. Rokuro says that he understands the situation well, but he can tell that she is still hiding something. He doesn't agree to anything yet and tells her that she needs to tell them her secret. Pencilgon tells them what it is, but we don't get the privilege of hearing it. In the real world, Rokuro leaves the shop and Rei calls out to him from her hiding spot. Rokuro is caught off guard and just remembers her as being some girl in one of his classes a year ago. Rei awkwardly just stares at him, and Rokuro desperately tries to remember her name. Luckily, he remembers at the last second, and Rei points out how big of a coincidence it is for them to meet there. Our boy was just buying typical gamer supplies, and Rei was heading to judo practice. Rei brings up how Mana told her that he is playing SLF, and she tells him how she is playing also. She would like to play together sometime, but Rokuro gets distracted by a message. It's an urgent message from Pencilgon, so he tells Rei goodbye and blasts out of there. Rei is just glad that she was able to form some words to talk to Rokuro. Rokuro bought so many energy drinks, which means he must be planning to have a long gaming session, so she hopes to meet him in-game again. At home, Rokuro loads up SLF and wonders if he should have asked for Rei's in-game name. In the game, Emo greets him a little too closely, and Rokuro reveals that he has something to tell her. Rokuro reveals that he will be fighting Weathermon the Tomb Guard in 2 weeks, and he is thinking of removing Emo from the party during that time. Emo absolutely loses her mind after hearing the name Weathermon and instantly rushes off to go tell her mafia boss father. Rokuro has no clue what that was all about, but has no time to find out since he needs to meet with Pencilgon. A look back at their meeting shows that Rokuro asked Pencilgon about bringing along Emo, who is an NPC. Pencilgon is of course familiar with the little bunny and tells him that if he really cares about Emo, then he should take her off his party. She then shockingly reveals that in SLF, once an NPC dies, they won't get respawned. Sometime later, we see that Emo's father has summoned Rokuro to hear his plan straight from his mouth. He wants to know if it's true that Rokuro plans to pick a fight with the one known as the Death Defier. Rokuro instantly realizes that this sudden event must be important. The best tactic he can use right now to talk to this mafia boss is to roleplay in this scenario and its characters. If he does it right, he might get some valuable information about Weatherman. Rokuro determines that he must persuade Vash to get on his side, and the key will be to use the word Vorpal Soul. Vash reminds Rokuro that he is too weak to take on Weatherman. Rokuro dramatically reveals that he isn't taking on this challenge because he thinks he can win. He explains that he will only be acting as a support, as his teammate will be doing most of the fighting. Rokuro explains that a group of murderers are taking advantage of Weatherman for selfish gain. They rack up tons of experience just by encountering him over and over again. Rokuro's teammate is the defector of this group, and she wants to end the fight once and for all. Rokuro explains that she has taken every measure to assure victory, but Vash counters that it doesn't matter how many measures they take. If they aren't strong enough, then they are just going on a mission of self-destruction. Death missions are not what having a Vorpal Soul is all about, and Vash taught him better than that. Rokuro has no intention of losing, and explains that he and his friends simply want to support their leader's will to win against Weatherman. Rokuro explains that coming to her aid is really just upholding his own Vorpal Soul. He tells Vash that all he needs is 2 weeks. 2 weeks for Vash to take Rokuro, who acknowledges he is an inexperienced fool, and turn him into a worthy challenger against a strong foe. Vash seems to get convinced as he begins talking about honor. He states that a certain man is very awkward, and Rokuro wonders if he is talking about Weatherman. This man is overly serious, never knowing when to stop. He lost his wife over a little lie, and because of that, he is cursed with an undying body. He is now just a walking corpse, unable to even put himself to rest. For that reason, someone needs to beat him down and put him to sleep. Vash swore not to lay upon this man himself, but since Rokuro is so insistent, then he won't stop him. On top of that, Vash even has his beloved daughter insisting. Vash then has Rakuro follow him as he agrees to give him a hand. Rakuro is then shocked when they arrive at a blacksmith's forge. He celebrates for a moment as he did a good job in getting to the next stage of the Rabatuza event. Vash calls upon the blacksmith named Bylok, who is also another one of Emo's siblings. That's already 3 kids so far, so Rakuro wonders if all the bunnies in Rabatuza are Vash's children. Rakuro is introduced, and Bylok says he looks just like a person named Evil. Vash takes a look at Rakuro's Vorpal weapons and is glad to see that Rakuro was accepted by his weapons nicely. Vash states that he will be ascending the weapons, but Bylok is shocked to hear that. She can't believe that Vash will be wielding the hammer himself, but Vash explains that he must. If Rakuro is going to take on the Death Defier, he can't just sit there and do nothing about it. Bylok becomes extremely excited and goes to get the forge started. Vash asks Rakuro if he has any good materials that he got after a difficult battle, so Rakuro searches through his inventory. He eventually finds something and hands Vash a quad beetle shell. It was able to withstand the Empire bees for a really long time, so it should be good material. Vash agrees and gets himself ready. Bylok explains that Rakuro should consider himself very lucky since their boss has not held a hammer in several years. The last time was even before he became the King of Rabbits. Emo reveals that Vash is actually a skilled blacksmith, and he is not an ordinary one either. His expertise in forging allows him to call himself a master craftsman, and his know-how on Age of Divinity's forgery makes him an ancient craftsman. As a master of both, he is a divine craftsman, the supreme blacksmith, second to none. Emo becomes excited as her father's ready to begin. Vash hammers away at Rakuro's weapons, and Rakuro is surprised to see magic circles appear. They pop out with every strike and are then absorbed into the weapon. Bylok reveals that ascending involves reading the memories and experience that weapons earn in battle, remolding them into what they are meant to be. Put differently, it's a technique that ascends weapons to their true form. Weapons with Vorpal in their name remember battles against strong opponents. Vash is taking their memories of fighting in Rakuro's hand and the power of the strong foe instilled in the material he gave Vash. He then mixes those two elements together to change the weapon's form. Bylok points out that Rakuro fought the Lycagon evenly, so she can't wait to see what weapon will result from that. Vash begins to sing, and Rakuro must be told to quiet down, as this is a very important moment. The little rabbits are in awe to witness the master at work, and Vash just keeps wailing on the weapon. After some time, Vash finally proclaims that the Vorpal Choppers have acquired their true form and name. They are now the Moonblade Waxing and the Moonblade Waning weapons. They are 2 swords from one blade, and only when they are paired together will they show their true value. Rakuro is of course excited about this amazing feat and immediately goes to check their stats. For the Waxing one, when used in a battle with a higher level enemy, it decreases the wielder's HP upon landing a critical hit. However, it also applies a damage bonus to his next attack. As for the Waning Blade, it restores HP under the same condition. This makes it clear that the blades really do complement each other. Rakuro then reads that a fusion gauge will be filled up after landing several critical strikes. Rakuro can't believe how awesome that is, since it means that the blades can fuse together. Rakuro wants to try them right away, but sadly finds that he has insufficient stats to equip them. Rakuro calms himself down from the disappointment as he realizes that it's a simple math problem. The required stats are 150, and he is currently at 57. Players get 5 points per level. Rakuro gets really depressed as he realizes that this means he will need to be level 50 before he can use them. The others try to console him, but it's no use as he wanted to use his sweet new weapons now. In 3rd Rima, Rakuro arrives late to his meeting with Pencilgon and Katso. They are furious since he isn't just a little late, as they have been waiting for 3 hours. Rakuro explains that he was busy with a unique scenario and kept going in it because weathermen came up. Pencilgon agrees to let him off the hook for being late as long as he reveals any information he received. Katso can't believe it, and Rakuro points out how bold Katso is for selecting the blonde girl as his avatar. Katso states that he doesn't need pointers on character design from the guy who looks like a bird and calls him an infamous criminal. Pencilgon intentionally had to pick a place for the meeting that had low traffic because Rakuro has so many people coming after him. Rakuro then catches them up on everything he learned about Weatherman the Tomb Guard. Katso wonders if they are dealing with some kind of undead monster, and Pencilgon recalls that Weatherman's movements did seem a bit janky. She assumed he was a cyborg type, but being undead makes more sense. Pencilgun strangely states that she has something to take care of and instructs them to meet later that night. She also instructs them to grind experience in the Iron Ruins in the meantime, and gives them a fishing rod and a map. The guys have no clue how the items are supposed to help, but Pencilgun reveals that it will all make sense when they get there. Pencilgun prepares to leave, but she notices the strange little bunny on Rakuro's back. She noticed something was strange the second Rakuro walked in and wonders if he really thought that the disguise was really working. Rakuro does his best acting job as he acts clueless to what she is talking about and simply explains that he's just following the latest fashion trend. Pencilgun is then shocked to see that he did manage to fool at least one person, as Katsu wonders what the fashion trend is. Pencilgun decides to drop the issue and just leaves. The two guys excitedly get ready to do some grinding, but Rakuro must take a moment to find the safest route. Katsu was all hyped up but gets discouraged since he now has to sneak around too since he is with Rakuro. Imo gets distressed as she reveals to Rakuro that she is getting a serious earache and would like to move around for a bit. Katsu finally realizes that something is off and becomes startled when he sees that Rakuro's equipment is talking. The jig is up, so Rakuro lets Imo free, and he states that he was just trying to see how long it would take for Katsu to notice. Katsu realizes that it's the NPC from the unique scenario. As he takes a closer look, he wishes he had one, but Rakuro tells him to get his own. The guys finally arrive at the entrance to the ruins, and Rakuro explains that he wants to get to level 50 as soon as possible. Katsu reveals that this is his first time in a party, and it's actually the first time Rakuro has partied with another player as well. They reach the entrance to the Iron Ruins of Divinity, and they both become excited as it clearly has a different vibe than the rest of the game. Thanks for watching my recap. Sign up to my free newsletter if you want to show some support to the channel, link is in the description.